Welcome to Eggs and Issues, a monthly business program presented by the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce. Listen weekday mornings to Ken and Matt on the WGAN Morning News. Eggs and Issues is supported by presenting sponsors Bank of America, Martins Point Healthcare, and Unum, in cooperation with Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, Oxford Networks, and WEX. And now, please welcome Portland Community Chamber of Commerce President Jack Lufkin.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for coming. What a fantastic crowd this is. This is our final Eggs and Issues of the season. And what I'd like to do is recognize Jason Lundy and the Eggs and Issues Committee for having a wonderful Eggs and Issues season. Fantastic speakers all through. So Jason, wherever you, thank you, sir. You did a great job. As was mentioned, my name is Jack Lufkin. I work at Key Bank in the business banking department, and I am the volunteer chair of the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce. We are so very pleased to have with us today Governor Paul LePage, who will give us his remarks here in just a few moments. I do want to say that although this is the last time we'll gather at Eggs and Issues, your Portland Community Chamber and Regional Chamber will be hard at work through the summer. Quincy Hensel, as our interim CEO, has been up to Augusta on a number of issues. We have, as a team, been advocating for a number of issues locally. In Portland, we may face up to 3 referendums that I would categorize as anti-business development. So it's going to be a busy season. To that end, many of you know that we have had a City Hall liaison for the past nearly 10 years. We're pleased to announce that we have entered into a contract with Toby McGrath, who was one of the architects of our successful campaign against the $15 an hour minimum wage. So we think Toby and the support that he's going to receive from his firm at Drummond Woodsum will be very beneficial. What that means to you is that you will begin to see advocacy newsletters arrive in your inbox, and while it will be Portland-centric, it will have a regional flair to it as well. The Portland Community Chamber supports that position, but we understand that what happens regionally affects all of us as well. So more to come on that. That is good news for us, and just a reminder to everyone. I announced this a few months ago, and haven't received any emails, but we do have an email address if you have thoughts that you wish the Chamber to engage on. It's issues@portlandregion.com, and so if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share with the Chamber leadership, please do send an email. So I will stop talking there, and we will get to the program. But before we do, we'd like to take a minute to thank our very important sponsors who helped to bring you Eggs and Issues through the season. So our presenting sponsor is Bank of America, Martins Point Healthcare, and Unum. Our cooperating sponsors, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, WEX, and First Light. Our reception sponsors, Clark Insurance, Key Bank, IDEX. And our parking sponsor, CV and Mahar Engineers. We also would like to thank the many people that are here from Headlight Audio Visual, who provides us with overall production support. And of course, Time Warner Cable's video service on demand broadcasts our program each month, so you can watch this again and again at your convenience, if you want to. The Forecaster is our print sponsor, and Maine Biz is our e-media partner. And we thank WGAN, who is our radio sponsor, who interviews our speakers and broadcasts live right from here every month. MTW is our, MTW TV serves as our broadcast partner as well. We also want to thank our special community partners, Anthem, Blue Cross and Blue Shield, the Bangor Daily News, the University of Southern Maine, and Oxford Casinos. We would also like to take a minute to announce our newest sponsor. We're very pleased about this. Spectrum Healthcare Partners is proud to join us as a new special community partner of the Chamber. Spectrum was founded over 20 years ago as a multi-specialty physician group and now employs over 600 people with more than 200 board-certified physicians specializing in anesthesiology, radiology, radiation oncology, pathology, vascular and interventional physicians, and orthopedics. I did that. That's not easy to do at 8 o'clock in the morning. You've heard the saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Never has this been more true for Spectrum than now. They are embarking on a new path in pursuit of better health for people of northern New England, and they are still offering the same high-quality, cost-effective, patient-centered care that we have come to know from Spectrum Medical Group, but with a fresh new look and a new twist on their name, Spectrum Healthcare Partners. That while they might look a little different on the outside, at the core they are what they always have been, a multi-specialty group of physicians, nurses, technicians, administrators, and advanced clinical providers deeply committed to providing compassionate, high-quality, cost-effective patient care. We would like to share a brief video with you about Spectrum Healthcare Partners. I want to thank you very much, Spectrum Healthcare Partners, for your support and partnership with the Chamber, and we look forward to working with you over the months and years ahead. AAA, Northern New England, and Springborn Staffing support our Tomorrow's Leaders and Entrepreneurs program, which allows area high school and college students to attend Eggs and Issues. If there are any students in attendance, I would ask you to please rise and be recognized. Well, let's give them a hand anyway. So. Maybe they're just too shy. So, Baker, Newman & Noyes supports our Community Corner program, which allows area nonprofits to promote their organization at Eggs and Issues. This month, we're pleased to have the Tate House Museum. Built in 1755, the Tate House opened as a historic house museum in 1935. The National Society of the Colonel Dames of America in Maine purchased and restored the building in 1932. We have two dames in attendance this morning, Mary Lou Sprague from Cape Elizabeth and Vanna Carmona from Portland. Little brief intro on the Tate House. It was constructed for Captain George Tate and his family, who had arrived in the colonies around 1750. Tate served as the senior mast agent for the British Navy, overseeing the cutting and shipping of white pines from Maine to England. As the only pre-revolutionary home in Greater Portland that is open to the public, the impressive period furnishing, beautiful grounds, herb gardens, and unique Tate House architecture offer an insightful glimpse into 18th century life in colonial Maine. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., the museum will kick off a year of calendared events with Opening with a Bang, a musket shot heard around Stillwater Village world. Guests include Thaddeus Broad, who was here with us this morning, may still be, there he is, a local tavern owner. With us today from the Tate House are Ralph Carmona, Mary Lou Sprague, Betty Janis, Harper Batsford, John, Thaddeus Broad, and Mary Farmer, museum docents, and also fellow board members Jessica Sirocco, Joan Hatch, James Romer, and Vanna Carmona. Would you all please stand and be recognized? Another important part of Eggs and Issues is to recognize new and renewing chamber members. If there are any new or returning chamber members in attendance, please stand, and we appreciate your continued support. So, no one here today? Well, And now on to the presentation. As was mentioned before, we are very fortunate to have here with us this morning our governor, Governor Paul LePage. In the past, we've given lengthy introductions, but I think he's, at this point, is known to the crowd, and he's a man that requires no introduction. But thank you, Governor, for coming here today. Governor Paul LePage.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be back. What I'd like to do is give you a few tidbits on where we are as a state, and then I'll open it up for questions. The state of Maine, when I took over in 2011, was 44th poorest state in America. We've made a little bit of headway. We're now 39th. But I'm telling you, it's nothing to be proud of. We should be the top 10. As far as quality of life, probably the most beautiful state in America, right here. In the summer months, we have some of the wealthiest people in America who grace our shores through the summer months. In fact, in the summer, we are the #1 second home ownership in America. We have some of the wealthiest people in the summer months. We're probably one of the wealthiest states in America. Unfortunately, they stay less than 6 months because of who we are as a state. Despite the fact that I am a businessman and I've pushed hard to become a pro-business state, we are still an anti-business state. And I'm going to talk about 3 topics: education, taxation, and energy. Education, we've passed out some graphs here. For 6.5 years I've been the governor, I have been told, and I've read it in the newspapers. Well, I haven't read them, but my staff reads the newspapers and they tell me what's in it. That I have been cutting education. That I have been cutting education. I keep cutting education. Well, the first graph on top here is what we've done to education since I've been the governor. We've increased it every single year. The issue is this: if you see the line that comes through the graph, that's the enrollment of our schools. We're losing enrollment. We're down to 176,000 kids, K through 12. Actually, it's pre-K through 12 now. In order to stay above 170,000, we put four-year-olds in there. No, seriously. If we don't put the pre-Ks, we fall below 170,000. It's really sad because we've lost our working class people. We are the oldest state in America. Now, this is the problem. Right now, I put up a budget in January, $6.8 billion. Now, this week, they're starting to work on it. Of course, they got to get out by June 21st is the deadline. So they were going to work on it now. They've had it for 6 months. Last I heard is the Senate wants to add $100 million to education. Democrats want to add $300 million to education. That's a 12% increase. This is the problem. We in Maine put 59 cents of every dollar spent on education makes it into the classroom. The national average is 64 cents of every dollar. Think about that. We have 148 superintendents for 176,000 kids. The state of Florida, which is ranked #7 education system in America, has 3 million kids, 64 superintendents. The national average for administering a school district is 2.4% of the school budget. State of Maine, it's 5.5% of the school budget. See where I'm going with this? A little bit top heavy. We have some of the poorest, lowest paid teachers in America because we don't put enough money in the classroom. I have told the Democrats and the Republicans, I've told the MEA, I've told everyone in education, I'm all in. If you want to put more money in the classroom, let's sit down and do it. The problem is by just putting money into education is the state puts the money in. Once the check is written, we have no say on where the money's spent. That's the problem. We have per capita one of the highest special education programs in America. Why are Maine kids worse off than the rest of America? They're not. The problem is Maine has no standard for identifying special ed. A teacher says, I have a disciplinary problem, that's special ed. You have a student with dyslexia, which is just another form of, it's just a different way of learning, that's special ed. Everything is special ed in Maine. We have a superintendent in the state of Maine that moves kids from a B school to a D school because he gets more state money. That's what's wrong with Maine. Our education system is top-heavy, and we're not putting enough money in the classroom, so our teachers and our students are the losers. I'm all in for putting more money in as long as we want to reform it and fix it. If we want to fix it, I'm all in. But if we're just going to throw money, it just doesn't work. I have a former boss, Mickey Moran, used to tell me, too much money hides a lot of sins. And that's the problem. The cost of education is skyrocketing. And we are flatlined as far as improvements in the education standards of our kids. Our scores have not moved in 20 years. We rank right around on the state exams, about 220 is where we stand. 218 to 222 is where we've been for 20 years. In Miami, English learners in Miami score 1 point behind Maine in verbals. Think about that. So we've got a lot of work to do, and it's not about money, it's about fixing the problems. And so I urge you all to tell your legislators that it's not just about money, it's about quality. It's about paying your teachers what they're worth. It's making sure that our kids get the best chance in life that they can possibly have. And the reason I'm so sensitive and passionate about it is I lived on the streets. I come from the streets. And there's only one way to beat poverty in this world. It's a good education and a good job. You're not going to do it by throwing money at a bad problem. So I'll move on from there. We are now the highest tax state in America. We are number one, up to $1 million, then we become number two. So if you make $1 million, good luck. The people in California, once you hit $1 million, they are the highest tax state in America. Under $1 million is the state of Maine. Now, I'll tell you this. If you take the top 10 states, most prosperous states, and the bottom 10 states, you put them side by side, and you look at what are the common denominators to prosperity. What makes the 10 richest states, most prosperous states, prosperous, and what makes the poorest states poor? There are two major common denominators. There's 3 or 4, but the two major ones that stick right out. Prosperous states have low taxes and they have low energy costs. Those are the two most striking. They're also very pro-business, and most of them are right to work. I'm going to give you a little story. Back in February, the state of Kentucky became a right-to-work state. 6 weeks after they became right to work, Toyota announced they're going to build a $1.3 billion plant in the state of Kentucky. Amazon is going to build the largest distribution center on the East Coast in the state of Kentucky. Now, location has a little bit to do with it, but they were looking at South Carolina and Tennessee. But they decided right to work. The minute they came right to work, they gave them a good shot in the arm. There's a third company, and I forget the name of it, but there's a third company going this. So they're going to have investments of over $3 billion in 3 companies. So being a tax state, high tax state with high energy costs keeps us poor. And I've been fighting to go from poverty to prosperity for 6.5 years. And you can take a look, you don't even have to take my word for it. You just go look at the 10 most prosperous states, like Florida, Texas, Tennessee, North Dakota. Of course, North Dakota's got a lot of oil. But if you take a look at their tax structures are changing. People are getting away from income tax and they're moving to a consumption tax. Let's take a look at New Hampshire, our neighbor to the south. We all know New Hampshire, and you should know because a lot of people that were living in Maine are now residents of New Hampshire. And I know of, since November, hundreds of people have sent me letters, emails, telephone calls saying, I'm out of here. State of New Hampshire, no income tax, no sales tax. They depend on one source of, their big source of revenue is property taxes. They are the number 7th highest property tax in America. The state of Maine, I call it the 3-legged stool. New Hampshire operates with the pogo sticks. They bounce around with one tax. They're very quick, agile. State of Maine, 3-legged stool. We drag around. We have a highest income tax in America. We have a sales tax that is very, very competitive, middle of the road, actually probably, I think it's around 30th. An area that we should look at very, very strongly because we have 40 million people who visit us a year. We ought to have them pay a little bit more sales tax. Since they're not here 6 months in a day, we can't get income tax, we might as well get a little more sales tax out of them. Where do you think we rank in property taxes in Maine? Number 9. 2 spots below New Hampshire. They have 1.3 million people. We have 1.3 million people. Our geography is larger. We're more sparsely populated. However, their budget is $2 billion less than ours. People say, well, it's the roads. Guess what? I'm talking about general fund. Highway fund is a totally different element. That's paid for by tolls and by gas tax. So think about where we are. So there's no wonder that people that have a few dollars and they retire, move out of state. They protect their nest egg. And they ought to. They owe it to their families. So if we would really think it through, we should move away from the income tax, get into a higher sales tax, have all our visitors pay more sales tax, help us pay for the state of Maine, for operating the state of Maine. Rick Scott in Florida, the governor, said, you know, Paul, we have a 7.5% sales tax, no income tax. No one complains when they go to Disney or Universal that our sales tax is too high. They just pay it, they enjoy themselves, and they go home. So we really need to be thinking about that going forward. I'm not going to be here, but the next governor should be seriously give it some serious thought. Of the 10 richest states, 10 poorest states, the highest tax states earn $23 billion less than the 10 most prosperous states. Think about that. Taxation doesn't generate revenues. And if you got rid of the income tax in the state of Maine, statistics show that 96 cents on every dollar that is given back to the taxpayer comes right back into the economy. 96% would be spent back in the economy. I mean, we keep shooting ourselves in the foot. And it's going to continue until we learn to look at the 50 states and recognize that they're laboratories of democracy. You take the best and you leave the worst, and you move on. I'm going to get into energy. The first graph, if you see there, way to the right, it's an industrial rate. Maine's is the highest industrial user in New England of electricity. We used to be about 50% of our load used to be industrial. Now we're down to 27%. Now what does that mean? That means that the paper mills have left. They're not the big users. You know, one paper mill equates to about 50,000 homes using electricity. That's how big a user they are. And so people say, well, we have the lowest cost of energy in New England. Yes, we do. But we're an industrial state. We're not a Massachusetts or a New Hampshire or a Vermont. We depend on our forest, 17 million acres. Now we've lost our paper mills. They have left because of our tax burdens. Not just the income tax, property tax. For instance, Millinocket, when Millinocket was, back when I first became governor, Millinocket sued the state of Maine for sudden and severe. They wanted to get extra tax money because the mill had closed. I became governor in 2011. The mill closed in 2008, but they asked us for a sudden and severe. We needed to give them more money. So we said no. The mill's been closed for 3 years. Well, they liquidated the mill for about $3 million. And when they liquidated the mill, the town of Millinocket was charging Great Northern they're assessing the mill at $184 million. Taking advantage a little bit. Of course, now they're gone. And it ties back to education. This year, Medway, East Millinocket, and Millinocket graduated about 50 graduates out of high school. 3 different high schools. Total graduates, 50 kids. See what I'm talking about? You could have had the high school in East Millinocket, you're 10 miles either way, 10 minutes on a bus. But no, we have 3 buildings, 50 kids. We really need to do some work. And the reason I think it's important to this crowd is the biggest opposition to reform are representatives from this region. It truly is the representatives from this region. I say that the Democratic Party is a wholly owned subsidiary of the MEA. Because whatever they say, they get. And it doesn't have to be efficient. If you take a look here, of the industrial rate of New England states versus Maine. We're the only industrial user. So folks, we do not compete against New England for energy. We compete against Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, and Alabama. Those are big industrial state users, the big lumber states. We lost Madison Paper 2 years ago. They didn't go out of business. They went to Minnesota. We've lost some companies from Maine to Wisconsin. Their energy rate's 30% cheaper. So this is what I tell the folks in the legislature. Lower the industrial rates and you can have every house in Maine with a solar panel on their roof. That's irrelevant. The relevant aspect is make yourself competitive so you can attract companies that will live off the land, the 17 million acres that we have. And let's go back to the 50s when Maine was very, very prosperous. Do you realize that in 1980, the richest town in Maine, the highest per capita, was Millinocket, Maine, and Waterville, Maine was second. Today, the per capita income in Waterville is under $30,000. In 1980, it was $35,000. We have to reinvent ourselves, and we have to go back to using our forest. It's a working forest, and it's got value. And we need to acknowledge it. You know, people say Maine's got the cleanest air, the least emissions in all the states. Generated within the state is the state of Maine. We are the cleanest. We have the cleanest portfolio. In the summer months, we have some of the worst air because of the winds. The reason we have the least amount of emissions is we've lost so much of our business. I was talking to the CEO of Texas Instrument one day, and he's telling me, he says, "Governor, I need your help. I cannot promote middle managers out of Texas to Maine because they look at it as a cut and pay. It costs them about 20%, 10% to make up for the taxes and 10% for the promotion. That can't happen. It will not happen because business has to be efficient and they have to be competitive. Now, you look at our nation and you see how many companies have left our country to foreign countries to manufacture and to do other things because it's cheaper. Now look at Maine being the most expensive. We're losing it to the 50 states, so we have the whole world against us. We need to be competitive. Competition is good. Competition promotes prosperity, and prosperity promotes a healthy lifestyle for the people of the state of Maine. In the summer, you see a lot of visitors. They're from every place else. And who waits on them? Mainers. If you can find them. Now we're trying to get foreigners to come in because we can't find enough Mainers. And so with that, I'm going to just touch on one other thing, and then I'll open it up for questions. Drugs. Drugs are killing our society. And here in Maine, worse than most any other state with the exception of New Hampshire. We are number 2 worst state in America. New Hampshire's the epicenter. We're number 2. 3 babies are born every day addicted to drugs. 3 babies. And if you want to see a sad sight, you go to a hospital and see a baby trying to be detoxed. It's a horrible sight. 1 person every day dies of an overdose. Think about that. So we have 14,000 people die every year in the state of Maine. We have 12,000 babies born. 1,000 of those babies are are afflicted to drugs, and we don't know what the long-term implications are. Some say there isn't any. Once they detox, they're going to be fine. That's fine. Right now, we're seeing kids starting in kindergarten, so we're just getting there. So the jury's still out in my mind. And then you have another 600 to 700 babies born that are afflicted with different types of rare diseases, disabilities. So you in effect have, say, less than 11,000 babies born to replace 14,000 people dying. And we're getting old by the day. I got a letter in my briefing binder this morning that the little emergency hospital in Jackman, Maine is going to close. And they're saying you can't let it close because the closest medical facility is 50 miles away in one direction, 75 miles the other. It's a really, really tough situation when you're a sparsely populated state. Drugs, folks, particularly now with this new called carfentanil, which is they tell me it's 10 times more potent than fentanyl, and fentanyl is 10 times more potent than heroin, and now they make a combination. It's a deadly, deadly drug. What we are doing a lot of things. We're going to build a 200-bed facility in Wyndham. We have 400 people. Beds are going into opiate homes for addicted people to try to detox them and try to get them on the straight and narrow and get them off the drugs and contributing back to society. We're working with our jails right now. I mean, I'm being criticized. We're taking people that have gone to jail for the first time, that are in there for drugs. They're nonviolent. We're trying to not harden them. We don't want them to become hardened criminals, so we're trying to see if we can't commute some of their sentences, get them working with probation and parole, and having work. One of the conditions of release is they have to go to work. We're getting them a job. So we want to get them back in society. But drugs, if we don't get a handle on this, and each and every one of us have a responsibility to make sure if we know someone that's on drugs, we have to get them help. Everyone in this room has a responsibility to help. So with that, I'll open it up. Anyone has questions, I will try to answer. And if I can't answer, I'll lie a little bit. Anyone? There's some mics here. I thought I saw some. There's some mics. If you've got any questions, anyone? I love it. This is easy. Oh.
It's not that easy. Governor, it's Ralph Carmona. I'm president of the Tate House Museum, and the question I have for you is you were talking about the value of the economy here in Maine, taxes, and the spread of taxes, and the role of education. What's your perspective on the nonprofit sector in terms of its value for the Maine economy and whether it contributes value to the economy as well?
Well, I would say it depends on what part of the nonprofit you're talking about. There's many, many nonprofits that are enormous contributors to the state. The museum, the arts have major contribution, particularly here in this area is very, very important. There's some parts, the food banks, very, very important contributors. There are some parts of nonprofits, though, that cost the state enormous amount of money. And I will tell you, land trusts. I was looking the other day, one land trust has taken $284 million of property off the tax rolls, another $89 million of real estate off the tax rolls. I'm a big, big believer that you own land, you should be able to do whatever you want with your land, but you should pay your taxes. I think land trusts should be paying taxes. Hospitals. Largest users of emergency services, rescue, fire, is hospitals and nursing homes. They pay no taxes. The largest users of police departments in the state of Maine is colleges and universities. They pay no taxes. So I think that they, in lieu of taxes, they ought to be contributing to the health and the operations of communities in which they're in. So, yes, major contributors. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. I was the mayor of Waterville for 8 years. The city of Waterville is 12 square miles. It's 6 miles long, 2 miles wide. 12 square miles. It has 3 hospitals, 2 colleges, 109 nonprofits, and 29 churches. And the rest pay taxes. We got to all chip in. Everybody's got to pay their fair share. Matter of fact, I think if you go to Colby College, you value Colby College and the rest of the city, I think you'll find that the value of Colby College campus is more than the entire city of Waterville. So I think they ought to be paying a little something. And of course, the legislature disagrees with me. And that's why we have high taxes, because not everybody pays their fair share. Anyone else?
Governor, over here.
Yes.
Your last comment about drugs, I had an incident that occurred last month. I didn't realize what 420 was until 420 hit. I own a go-kart track, and of course we don't allow intoxicated driving. And a number of people showed up on 420 to drive go-karts, and of course we wouldn't let them race, so it impacted because they all went back home and got everyone to give us a 1-star review on Facebook and complain that we were discriminating against them because they couldn't drive intoxicated. My concern is, what are we doing knowing that we have legalized marijuana coming? What are we doing to try and identify these people who are on the highways driving in the state they are driving in an intoxicated way?
Well, I will tell you this, that the Department of Public Safety has been working diligently with the people in Colorado and the people in Washington State, because they are the forerunners. They started this mess. We are trying to find ways and tests that we can get people off the roads that are inebriated through drugs. It's a very difficult process. I will say this. I've spent a lot of time in Washington in the last few months working with the Trump administration in healthcare, in the monument, welfare reform. And that's one of the things that the Attorney General Jeff Sessions is saying, that the federal government may have to step in, because it is becoming a real safety issue around the country. And so I'm hoping that if we're going to legalize it, let's make it a national legalization, and let's move on from there and have the federal government helping us identify ways of keeping people off the roads. Yes, sir.
Governor, can you address the referendum process and how we have, in my opinion, ceded some of the obligations of our legislature and given that over to a public that may or may not be acting on a motion and not necessarily as many facts as a deliberative legislative process might want to have?
Exactly. Very good point. We have tried, I put some bills up to have referendum process better distributed around the state. In other words, by either Senate districts, raise it from 10% to 15% to make it a little bit more difficult, because it's supposed to be difficult. but the Democrats killed it. And so they like it the way it is. They're in control, and there's nothing that's going to happen. Unfortunately, that's what happens. Referendums are a really bad way to govern. We are in a republic, representative republic. We are not in a democracy. We are not 100% democracy. We know that democracies, 100% democracies don't work. That's why we have a different system. Referenda is the purest form of democracy, but it doesn't work. For instance, ranked choice voting is unconstitutional. The 3% is the worst way. If you really think about it, most of you here, you were raised growing up, I'm sure your parents and your grandparents would tell you, keep your nose clean, work hard, study hard, and you'll be a success. That was years gone by. Today, if you're successful, we're going to penalize you. We're going to punish you for being successful in this country. The more successful you are, the more we're going to take out of your pocket. So I think it needs to be changed, but we do not have, at least the Republicans do not have the majority in the House or the majority in the legislature, and therefore very little is going to happen about changing the referendum process, at least this in the 128th legislature. I will say this, however, the 3% is likely to go away because we're losing. I mean, we have the largest outmigration of Mainers than I've seen in my lifetime right now. And we're having a very, very difficult time attracting people. We hired a psychiatrist at the Department of Corrections, hired him last August or September. He was going to start the first of the year. He called us in December and said, why would I want to be penalized an extra 3% to go work in Maine? What people don't realize is in order to get to Maine, you got to go through New Hampshire. And there's no taxes in New Hampshire. You stop and get gas, and you talk to the attendant, and why would you come to Maine? So it's a real problem, and I'll tell you, in this November, it's going to be even worse, because there's a new bill coming out, a new referendum from the Maine People's Alliance, that is going to raise your income tax to 22.6%. The state of Maine will have an income tax of 22% if this referendum passes. It's outrageous. They're trying to compete with the federal government. Think about it. If you're maxed out at the Fed, you pay 38%, another 22%, then you pay your Social Security, then you pay your excise tax, you pay your property tax, you pay your sales tax. You might keep a dime. So, sir, I think it's out of control. We've tried, we put some bills up, but they just kill them in committee.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So you're full of good news this morning. My name is Justin Starboard. I own the Abley Group. We're a marketing and business development firm here in Maine. And actually, you hit on a couple of things I was going to ask you about, because as a business owner, sometimes you're conditioned here in Maine to accept bad news and then react. And so, my question was going to be focused on, what are some things that you're seeing that some of the successful businesses in Maine that have withstood the doom and gloom that you've talked about, and that others can emulate. But I think I've changed my question today to say, how can the business owners that are in this room can support or assist in driving down these taxes and opportunities that we have to take advantage of the location that we live. You talked a little bit about the exodus. I was 18 and graduated from Edward Little and vowed never to return. 12 years later, my wife fell in love with the month of June while we lived in California, and wanted to raise our family here because it was close to family. A lot of the benefits that you have talked about and the positive that you've mentioned are the reasons that we're here. We also brought our business, which was, by some accounts, a mistake. because of those taxes. But how, as a business owner, can we assist in I don't want to say bring back the glory days, because I think we are in the midst of glory days, and the revolution of technology, the opportunities for education for kids, and some of the things that we do offer for the future. So, you know, what's next? What else can we do?
Okay,
What are
very
some
good,
solutions?
very good point. One is we're the oldest state in America, as I said earlier. Number two is we're a great state, beautiful state. Many people, we are one of the safest states in America, with the exception of the drug problem that we're facing now. If you take that out of there, take the drugs out, we are still the safest state in America. So there's a lot of good happening. This is what I recommend to move forward, move the state forward. There are two things. One, businesses have to get off the sideline and get into the fray. And I keep hearing every single day, well, we're a business, you know, we have customers on both sides of the aisle. I ran Martin's for 16 years. And Mickey Martin used to tell me, it's a risk, but I'd tell you, go for it, because if you don't, we're not going to be here anyways. Never hurt the business at all. What people respect is leadership. And so I'm asking the business community to lead. You got to step off the sidelines and you got to get into the fray. The businesses in Maine step off the sidelines, get in the fray, we win all day long. We win all day long. The Maine People's Alliance could be destroyed by business by simply standing up and speaking out. That's number one. Number two, I have a bill, two bills that I put in that is intended to lower the age of Mainers by attracting and keeping our youth. It's interest-free loans to anybody that goes on beyond high school. State borrows money at 1.5%. I think they can afford to invest in their kids. That bill was passed in 2014 because of an election year, but they didn't fund it. So I'm asking for you folks to speak to your legislators and tell them to fund it. Put some money up. Secondly, I'm asking, I've got a bill up there now and the Democrats are holding it back. They don't want to pass it, and this is what it does. It allows businesses to hire young people, and you pay off their student loans or help them pay off their student loans, you get a dollar-for-dollar reduction in your taxes. For businesses. For nonprofits, we give it to the individual. When they pay off their student loans, they deduct the student loans as a deduction against their taxes. Dollar for dollar. Not a credit, dollar for dollar. You pay off $10,000, you're likely not going to have any income tax that year. Unless you're a doctor or a lawyer. I'm kidding.
We have time for one more question.
I met a lady this week. She was one of the physicians came in the office. She said, I retired this year and I still got 6 months to pay my student loans. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for being here this morning. We've heard a lot about Maine's challenges this morning, and you touched a little bit about on how safe Maine is, but could you tell us what are Maine's 3 top assets or opportunities, what we should be excited about this morning?
We have 17 million acres of forest land. We have more forest today than we had in 1955. So we've been enormously good stewards of our forest. And the companies that were here that own the land have all sold it off. So we need to reinvest into the forest. We need to reinvest into our farms, and we need to double down on our fishing. Those are all assets that we can become prosperous if we're good stewards. That's one. 2, I think, as I said earlier, Maine is a beautiful state. I mean, you know, I keep telling people, we need to change the law so that people have an incentive to stay in Maine, not leave for 6 months and a day. You know, I am not against anyone going to Florida in January and February. I'm not. In fact, I might do that myself. But the rest of the year, there's no reason not to be in Maine. We have a great culture. We have it's just a beautiful state. I wish we were a little bit more populated in the northern part of the state. I'd like to see, because there's just gorgeous people up there too. Aroostook County, for instance, some of the nicest people in the world. So the people are great. The problem is they're getting too old too fast. We got to get younger people up there to take over. And I'd say, finally, 25 years ago, the state of Maine had one of the best education systems in America. Over the years, through no fault of their own, other than embracing status quo and not moving ahead, the federal government, with the Department of Education, No Child Left Behind, and all these programs come in, which are designed with good intent, but they affect rural states adversely. I think with the federal government now giving waivers to states, we can now become, if we get off the status quo, we could become a leader in education in this country. I think everything is there to do it. We have a good university system. We have a good community college system. And I will say this, and I'll take credit for this, is now you can go to the community college system, university, you can transfer between campuses, between the community college system to the university system. When I was in college, you couldn't do that. And it's taken about 50 years to do it since I've left college. And how I did it was very good. It was the help of Chancellor LePage. The very first week he became our chancellor, I gave him a challenge. I said, I'd like you to make sure that we can interchange credits, transfer credits between campuses and through all the schools in Maine. And if you get that done by October, you can keep the first $10 million of your budget. And he got it done. I'm telling you, I'm very proud of that, because that is a major, major move forward in education, in higher ed. We do have some real quality education. We have Bowdoin, Bates, Colby, Hudson, University of New England, St. Joseph, Thomas College. These are all top-notch. Then you get the university, and the community college system is probably one of the best deals in America. And then you got Maine Maritime Academy, which is, to me, one of the best institutions in the world. Not just America, but in the world. So those are the things I think we could be moving on.
Thank you, Governor.
Very welcome. Thank you all.
Thank you, Governor, again, for your remarks. As always, you can stay up to date by connecting via Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. Stay tuned to the Chamber's website for a video of this morning Eggs and Issues. I would like everyone to be reminded that Propel, the young professionals group of the Chamber, is having their Ignition Awards on June 29th. This is a not-to-be-missed event with a food truck competition, local beer, and a lot of networking down at Thompson's Point. And today is the last day that you can get early bird tickets for the Ignition event. So please check out Propel and attend the Ignition Awards. Thank you all for coming. Have a great rest of your weekend.